Hi. Hey, everybody. They're gonna throw us out at 9, so I have like 3 hours of bullshit. So I'm gonna need you all to move closer, and whatever's going on back there can stop right now. And you're welcome to sit on the floor. That'd be really nice. Yeah, it's a nice floor.
It's really nice.
And
It's carpeted and soft.
yeah, it'd be nice, whatever. But okay, yeah, I'm also near side, so I don't even know who's back there. All right, everybody, let's do this. Thanks for the introduction, by the way. No, I'm kidding. It was mutually agreed upon. Thanks for being here. Yeah, listen, we're all under stress. Planes are falling out of the sky. Teenage Nazis are plundering the treasury. Lawless billionaires are dismantling literal lifelines. We have a government of terrorists and sadistic mobsters. But at the same time, I'm very excited about this book, and I'm excited you're here. I want to celebrate it, the end result of almost a full decade of work. So I want this to be light, a respite from the terror and torture that we're experiencing, okay? Good times, right? Good. So let's talk about Israel. By the way, you can share this on campus if you want, big poster, a statue, whatever. But if you share this, then you will be expelled and deported. So we're going to be safe and use this one alone. I love visual ephemera of culture. Stamps, puzzles, toys. I love that stuff. And with Israel, it's especially useful because Zionist education in the diaspora never progresses beyond the level of children's puzzles and storybooks. And so this could be adult education right here. Know your land. Or this, a fairy tale military parade state. Just a dozen pieces. And I did this myself in like 5 minutes. Not that hard, actually. I built my own military utopia. I love stamps. Look at this series. It's airmail. So there's airplanes, sure. There's also trees. And I love the mix of technology and nature. It's special, And just a few weeks ago, by the way, Netanyahu updated the series with a gift to President Trump. This actually is a real thing he gave, technology in the form of pagers Israel's used for its mass terrorist atrocity in Lebanon. And a tree or a tree stump, I guess signifying colonial destruction. And this was a gift. And then just yesterday, Trump repaid the favor with an AI video featuring him and Netanyahu lounging in a Trump Gaza resort. That's real, that's a real AI whatever. Each of these images is more grotesque than anything I could ever come up with. But anyway, we're gonna be light, fun times. We're gonna talk about stamps. We love stamps. We love stamps with cops, right? Love stamps with frontier guards. Look at the 70s cop show in Israel, or it's something like that. Love riding motorcycles, rescuing children, feeding the indigenous, doing whatever this is. I have no idea. I also love, both of them have these quotes on the bottom from Psalms. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. Psalms 121:4. You also see that in this tasteful military parade diorama I found, complete with trees and technology again. He that keeps Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. I don't understand how that's positive. It's like, why are you advertising that, We will give you insomnia. I don't understand how that's a motto, but I do love cards, and I want to share more with you because this is my bar mitzvah. I love Shana Tova cards. This is how I think of the new year. New beginnings, apples, honey, military parades, fighter jets, bayonets, tanks, artillery, healthy society. Shana Tova from a normal guy. Shana Tova, let's depopulate this village. Sorry, too soon? This one actually I like, but I think I might have ruined my scanner because it has actual sparkles, and I think I got them everywhere. But this one's my favorite. It has everything. Verdant agriculture, beefy soldier in a beret, Mary Tyler Moore with a knowing smile, literally emerging from a flower bed in his grasp. English and French bonne année, sorry, I'm not sophisticated, to remind you we're cultured, we're civilized, we're European. But I do think we need to update these in light of the past year, when we've seen the horrific underside of a broken masculinity military culture. So I made some new ones, using the same template, if you will, with more accurate images that Israeli soldiers have posted to TikTok triumphantly, parading the undergarments of people they'd killed or displaced. This one I felt was a little bit romantic, just because you could see he's very happy and they're getting along. But just in general, though, it's an abomination. Anyway, You can see on the right here, the first card I showed is Theodor Herzl, the founder of modern political Zionism. Here he is receiving Moses' staff from 1901 Argentina. No, that's actually real. It's a real thing. He's often depicted as a modern-day Moses. Here he is bringing the tablets, shattering the tablets. Both these drawings are by the Zionist artist Ephraim Moshe Lilien, who also took the iconic photo of Herzl in Basel staring over the Rhine River. It's been reproduced nonstop to this day, even flipped on a rug with Jerusalem in the background. Of course, my version was from 2021, recording his thought process, and it will all be accomplished without genocide, unless. Interesting side note, in 2020, the New York Times arguing it's terrible we have a reality TV show president, therefore we're going to run a reality TV competition for our Democratic presidential endorsement, featuring our opinion editors choosing which candidates to vote off the island, etc. But if you look closely in the background as they interview the contestants for president, you'll find that photo with some kind of signature on it. I don't know if it's Herzl himself or what. Here too. I like to think that Theodor Herzl, the founder of 20th century Jewish ethno-nationalism, is hovering over the times. So when they describe textbook ethnic cleansing as a Gaza development plan or an audacious proposal or by a real estate developer, he is guiding their hearts. If I can bring it back to stamps for a moment, it's like Israel's celebratory Gaza Strip stamps from 1957, boasting of the liberated Gaza Strip. Anyway, that's the news side. So editorials, here's an editorial 1 week after October 7th, when Israel's leaders were openly demanding and planning genocide. Israel can defend itself and uphold its values. I'm not sure it's aged so well, but that depends on how you define Israel's values. When I first saw this, I was like, what is this picture? Whose hand is that? It's a bizarre thing. Don't you agree somewhat? I think so. Anyway, I realized it's Herzl guiding the writers, and for all we know, that's Herzl himself protecting the Palestinians through his Zionist vision articulated every day in the New York Times. Now, we all know about Herzl. By the way, if I'm talking too quickly, I can slow down, but I have a lot of slides to go through, so let me know. You're welcome to interrupt. Am I going all right?
You're good.
All right, cool. Yeah, whatever. Think so. We all know about Herzl, the founder, but there was another founder. Some would say co-founder, and his name was Max Nordau. Nordau was the main Zionist visionary behind muscle Judaism, the idea that Jews needed to reinvent ourselves physically, psychologically, and emotionally into modern-day Maccabees. This is from Beitar, the explicitly fascist, and I mean really fascist, Zionist movement. By the way, this is from 1946. Did they not learn anything from the recent past? Speaking of muscle Jews, this is from a Zionist gymnastics journal from 1904. And last year, one of the photos posted by Israeli soldiers that I was alluding to earlier was this. And I was fascinated by the progression of Zionist self-image and reality filtered through desperate, overcompensated, broken masculinity. And he's got a mustache. But to reiterate, Nordau articulated a defining strain of Zionism that continues to this day. As seen in Netanyahu's bluster in 2018, the strong are respected and alliances are made with the strong, and in the end, peace is made with the strong. The flip side, of course, is Zionism's internalized anti-Semitism regarding diaspora Jews. Implicitly here, the weak who crumble are slaughtered and erased, or more explicitly, an Israeli fascist propaganda that continues to this day. That's just an echo of an earlier strain you can see in this Jewish population growth in Palestine, 1880 to 1923. It's in Yiddish, so you read it from right to left, but you can see the Jewish evolution from Schleppy Schlubber as the colonial project expands until we're standing up straight laying bricks. Also, you can see the earliest guy, he's old, seated, doesn't have any arms, and then look at this evolution. Not only laying bricks, but he has Popeye arms. Anyway, I did a whole book about this, and I promise not to rehash too much, but I just want to note that I quoted Nordau in the initial iteration of Diaspora Boy, the contempt for diaspora Jews that animates Zionist thought. A Jew without Israel is a cripple within and a counterfeit person without, so that like everything unreal, he is ridiculous and hateful to all men of high standards. As a mark of how important Nordau was, he too was immortalized on stamps. He had his own portrait by Ephraim Moshe Lilien, his own postcards, even his own rug. Every Jewish ethno-nationalist gets his own rug. It's one of the rules. Nordau even got chewing gum wrappers. These were like $35 on eBay. I was thinking of it, but they don't give you the gum too, but it's like, so I don't know, I'm not doing it. But look at the bottom, it says Yad Yamino Shel Herzl, the right hand of Herzl. which is how he was seen. In his biography, written by his wife and daughter, so obviously not unbiased, but Herzl was worried because everybody thought he was insane. Go figure. Schiff says that I'm insane. At the end of 3 days, immortalized like a Jesus thing, the idea pierced Nordau like a sword of light. The air vibrated about those two. And he got up and said to Herzl, "If you are insane, we are insane together. Count on me." We'll get to why this is important soon, but I just want an excuse to put these two guys together up there. And in 1926, thousands of Zionists in Palestine pilgrimaged to his body lying in state. And by the way, what Jews do that? So Nordau was a Zionist king. And in Hebrew school, we get a little taste of that. Herzl's first and most loyal colleague and closest advisor. Okay, sure. Hey, what was he doing before Zionism? He wrote a series of books. Okay, what books? Conventional Lies of Our Civilization and Paradoxes. That's it? It turns out that before re-envisioning the Jewish body and soul, literally, Max Nordau was changing the very vernacular of cultural criticism with a book called, wait for it, Degeneration, published in German in 1892 and 1893, just 3 years before he joined Herzl. This is the English edition in 1895. I would have preferred this cover, but they just went with this. I cannot overestimate the impact this book had on culture from the turn of the 20th century to this very moment. First, let's check out the dedication page, shall we? Wow, Cesar, I don't know if it's Cesar or Caesar. I'm going with Cesar because it sounds really affected. So, Cesar Lombroso, who could the future co-founder of Zionism be thanking here? And writing a 3-page enraptured monologue at the start of his book. Dear and honored master, wow, Cesar Lombroso must be an august man of science. This is Cesar Lombroso. Or possibly this from another photo. Or according to lots of photos today, his skeleton greeting visitors in the museum in Turin, Italy, filled with hundreds of criminal skulls he dug up from cemeteries. You see, Lombroso was the founder of criminal anthropology and the theory of the born criminal. According to this Getty photo, his head went on a traveling show in the 1970s. But according to tourism photos posted online, his entire skeleton is on display in his museum of criminal skulls. He wants to be, with them forever. His body, his corpus, is a mystery, which is telling because his entire shtick was interpreting the body, and the skull especially. I've been trying to get to the bottom of it, annoying the directors of the museum with multiple emails asking for evidence. Hello and greetings from New York City. Can you send me photos of his head? They won't reply to me because it's a phrenology museum and they know I'm going to make fun of it. Anyway, Cesar Lombroso was your average turn-of-the-century European dude who measured female criminal skulls and analyzed the tattoos of sex workers in order to determine their levels of innate criminality, or as the co-founder of Zionism called him, dear and honored master. By the way, I'm just going to put it out there very quickly. If I'm with someone and they have 500 tattoos of penises, I'm just going to say it doesn't really put me in the mood, and I'm sorry if that's problematic or whatnot. Anyway, Cesar Lombroso advanced the theory of born criminals, atavism, and stigmata of degeneration, common to the criminal type. Nordau expanded that idea, summarized here. Degenerates are not always criminals, prostitutes, anarchists, and pronounced lunatics. They are often authors and artists. All right. First of all, he's a quack. He agrees with Lombroso about degenerates and the phrenology and all that eugenics derangement. But also, degeneration is a howl against culture at the turn of the century, against literature, music, and art. Here's a typical passage. The asymmetry of face and cranium finds, as it were, its counterpart in their mental faculties. Some of the latter are completely stunted, often morbidly exaggerated. Also, he sounds a lot like this guy, talking about stimulants like hashish and arsenic, and bread made with bad corn causing descendants to deteriorate into the lowest degrees of degeneracy to idiocy to dwarfishness, etc. It sounds like the kind of thing that RFK Jr. would find in an online journal that he calls his scientific, whatever, projects, things. But Nordau focused on artistic expression in response to accelerating societal change, basically decadence, nihilism, or nihilism, however that's pronounced, listlessness, and what you might call doomerism today. Singling out moral insanity and emotionalism, mental weakness, despondency, pessimism, a vague fear of men, and self-abhorrence, all the good stuff. This would intersect pretty seamlessly with how he characterized non-Zionist Jews just a few years later. But I want to focus on his arts criticism now. Nordau extrapolated from a perceived mental to moral illness. That which nearly all degenerates lack is a sense of morality and of right and wrong. For them, there exists no law, no decency, no modesty. He applied it to the arts, condemning Tolstoy, Ibsen, Wilde, and Whitman, and all Impressionist painters who he said had degenerate trembling of the eyeball. Yeah, and by the way, side note, my eyes have been very odd lately, and so he might have had a point on that, but we don't need to go into it. I actually brought eye drops just in case, but we're doing okay right now. His solution, quarantine the degenerate artists and ban their books, art, and music from the public sphere, lest they infect the rest of society. As he put it, the mental contagion was a disease of the age that threatened civilized humanity. If that sounds familiar, 130 years later, our Nazi overlord began spewing the same garbage. Unless it is stopped, the woke mind virus will destroy civilization and humanity will never reach Mars. He wrote it with his typical illiteracy, but you get the point. And just, yeah, I'm not gonna, you get the point, right? I'm not gonna belabor it with another sentence here. Yeah. All right, but back it up. I cannot overemphasize the effect degeneration had on world culture. An international bestseller, it was cited throughout the press during Oscar Wilde's trial, which took place in 1895, just when Degeneration appeared in English. And while in prison, Wilde begged for clemency, writing the British Home Secretary, essentially, Max Nordau is right, I have the artist's mental disease of madness, but I can be cured. In Dracula, published in 1897, Mina Harker says this about the vampire. The Count is a criminal and of criminal type. Nordau and Lombroso would so classify him, and qua criminal, he is of imperfectly formed mind. Or Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's novel was 1818, so long before Degeneration, but the Universal Pictures that came out in 1931 had this, the abnormal brain of a typical criminal, all of these degenerate characteristics, check amazingly with the case history of the dead man before us, whose life was one of brutality, of violence, and murder. And the ultimate test of his impact, he was immortalized in comics, or at least in one cartoon in Puck here in New York, mocking this reactionary putz. The whole thing is very interesting, actually. I'm not going to go into it now, although, well, I will say, can you hear me still?
Yeah.
This is funny. I mean, it's like, because he was a reactionary, so what they're saying is, how we are degenerating, a few examples in support of Nordau's theory. So it's like, back in the day, we would do this to supposed witches, but now Jews, Catholics, Protestants all sit together, and that's a horror thing. But they had to go after him physically, which is interesting considering that, he was essentially a phrenologist. And they said this, in the mighty days of yore, a man who went around like this would have been confined as a lunatic, but we are so degenerate now that Nordau's appearance only makes us laugh. That was his typical, look, and so I think that was kind of fitting. All this is by way of saying, a generation later, when the Nazis launched their campaign against degenerate art, they were building on the foundation Nordau established. We don't learn that in Hebrew school either. Now, obviously, Nordau was not the only critic to speak about degeneration, but he was the one to make it a household term and to link art to mental and physical disability. 5 years after Hitler condemned degenerate art in Mein Kampf, German architect Paul Schultz-Naumburg published Art and Race, juxtaposing modern art with photographs of the mentally and physically disabled in 1928. By 1933, Nazis confiscated or destroyed thousands of works by 1,400 artists, putting them out of work, locking them in prison, forcing them into exile, or driving them to suicide. In addition to expressionists and other non-photorealistic artists, those targeted for censure included artists creating explicitly political grotesqueries grappling with the continental crisis. Those include masters like George Grosz and Otto Dix, drawing, in Otto Dix's case, and also George Grosz to a large degree, drawing the horrors of the First World War. In 1937, the Nazi exhibition of degenerate art opened in Munich and traveled to 13 German and Austrian cities, becoming the most popular presentation of modern art in history. By the way, the crowd here looks like how the Kennedy Center is going to look in 2 months. When it arrived in Frankfurt, a newspaper write-up was headlined, "Art equals madness." Here's the Berlin site of the exhibition, which, although it's covered in flames, I actually drew that building for the cover of this book. You can tell on the left side there, especially. All of this is by means of saying the concept of degeneration ties my art to this vast history. including cultural history that led to Zionism, of uncomfortable art, and of reactionary efforts to delegitimize that art as an evolutionary throwback, as a sign of moral rot, or as mentally ill, which it is, of course, but not in a bad way. A unifying theme of this book, aside from death to fascists, is taking degeneration in art, in physicality, in Nazi shit, and throwing it back at them. But also today, just this past month, it's all the more relevant as Nazis have updated the vernacular from degeneration to DEI. To be clear, DEI is their substitute for slurs, but in a broader sense, it signifies degenerate. As I hope I've made clear, central to degeneration is a denigration of disability. 9 days into his new term, our Nazi president crystallized DEI as the new degeneration after 2 planes collided midair for reasons unknown. The Nazi immediately condemned DEI, blaming non-existent intellectually disabled air traffic controllers. In addition, he blamed multiple disabilities for the disaster, including, in a seeming callback to Max Nordau, dwarfism. His Nazi co-president blamed the existence of black pilots. Nothing was known about the crash at the time, but they're Nazis, and Nazis have only one playbook. When not lying about tragedies, they've criminalized trans existence and trans healthcare under the guise, in part, of abolishing DEI. They are openly eugenicists, another key component of degenerate ideology. Trump State Department official has repeatedly called for mass sterilization of low IQ trash. And all 3 leading Nazis, Musk, Vance, and Trump, demanded the reinstatement of Doge Nazi eugenicists. 20 years ago, this alone would have gotten you removed from public life permanently. They're saying explicitly we shouldn't hire, and employers must not be penalized for discriminating against the exact people labeled degenerate by their German Nazi precursors. And it goes without saying, their language and policies against non-white migrants are copy-pasted from Nazi German classifications of entire populations of humanity as degenerate. And although Jews are nowhere near the top of the target list, in the minds of these Nazis, Jews are degenerates too, or I should say, certain types of Jews. Non-Zionist Jews, anti-fascist Jews, multicultural Jews, that's how they call it, multicultural Jews. Jews who don't see Israel as our birthright and our destination. Here they borrow from Max Nordau's denigration of diaspora Jews. Nazi criminal Steve Bannon made that explicit at CPAC this past weekend, calling progressive American Jews worse than terrorists. Quote, the number one enemy to the people in Israel, he said, are American Jews that do not support Israel and do not support MAGA. Like so many other Nazis who are also Zionists, Bannon was parroting Nazi terrorist manifestos. In this case, the manifesto of Anders Breivik, the Norwegian Nazi mass murderer who wrote this about good Jews and degenerate Jews fit for extermination. Jews that support multiculturalism today are as much of a threat to Israel and Zionism as they are to us. So let us fight together with Israel, with our Zionist brothers, against all anti-Zionists, against all cultural Marxists and multiculturalists. And of course, they've been goaded on by Jewish leaders who have spewed the same anti-Semitism against anti-fascist Jews for generations. I did a lot of Nazi comics in Trump's first term. And when I say Nazi comics, I don't mean what Zionists call my comics. I mean comics condemning Nazism. Our leader made racist remark. That's utterly preposterous. Sorry, not really reading with a Nazi emphasis there, but you get the point. Never again will our, I actually don't like reading my own comics, so that's part of the explanation. But can you read it? I mean, I will read it if you want, but. Never again will our ethnic cleansing nightmare be invoked to stop an ethnic cleansing nightmare. Remember, don't use the word Holocaust until they're shoveling our ashes out of ovens. But still, the art was not meant to be literal, but a howl of protest to marshal our history and memory as catalysts to stop the catastrophe. Now and again, especially when Trump was stymied, even I felt it might be slightly strident, and it was more metaphor than literalism. But now that he's unchecked and filled with vengeance and replacing government employees with loyal terrorists, it feels more literal. And his co-president, this, 15 years of comics, and he just Sig Heils it out. Or even more to the point. Yes. By the way, the lowest intelligence, lowest self-awareness guys are always the eugenicists. Also, you don't need a Sig Heil to know a Nazi is a Nazi. He's been spouting Nazi lies about black people, trans people, Muslims, non-white migrants, and Jews, sometimes dozens of times a day for weeks on end for years now. He recruited discredited, ethics-free journalists who agreed to concoct lies about the supposed suppression of far-right voices so that he could unleash an avalanche of Nazis onto Twitter and turn it into the country's leading Nazi propaganda outlet. Or as Barry Weiss says, By the way, the book cover fits the arm precisely. It's like she knew even then that she'd be a propagandist for Nazism. So yeah, their Nazism is not an exaggeration. And when I say their Nazism, I'm talking about Musk, Trump, etc., and not a secret. And this is a crisis. What is to be done? I don't know. Meanwhile, during the first Trump term and during Biden's term, I did a lot of comments about democratic apathy and appeasement in a time of crisis. I mean, I can read that too, but feast, my friends, and tomorrow we rebuild together. It's actually a little hard. These eyes, they don't work anymore, so, but yeah, you got the point. I will see an ophthalmologist very soon, don't worry. I know you're all quivering here. We were repeatedly warned about fascism by the same people who refused to take meaningful action to stop fascism. I mean, this was after the leak of the end of Roe v. Wade, when their constituents were begging them to do something. And they were like, we can't do shit, just vote. And who sought to partner with the people seeking to destroy democracy. Catering to Nazis. You know, I'd love to help you, but what would Stormfront say? This is when, he was just copy-pasting Stephen Miller's immigration policies. Continuation of Nazi policies, Pennywise Biden. Literally, this wasn't even much of a change of his language. It's something they actually did. And showering Nazis with billions of dollars in defense contracts here after he was openly, emphatically a Nazi. And by the way, just yesterday, I didn't clip it, but another report about how Democratic National something or other, the Congressional something, DNCC, raising a shit ton of money from SpaceX and Palantir. So fuck them. Partnering in genocide with a MAGA allied war criminal and terrorist. And treating anti-genocide activists in your base with the brutality you warn is coming from the other side. Vote for me or my opponent will do this. Still, I thought if the country was at the crumbling stage, Democrats would be roused. I'm glad Democrats opted for a policy of reconciliation, compromise, and mutual respect. Okay, they are cowards and centrists and incrementalists, but if the country starts to teeter and collapse into a fascist oligarchy, you would hope they would rise to the occasion, right? It's like you have one job. But that was naive. They did not have one job. Their job was not to protect the country. The job was to maintain their own personal standard of living. This is their philosophy. Why aren't you thanking us? The other guys would decapitate you. And this is their strategy as democracy falls. I didn't actually write this, so I need to see what I clipped here. Oh yeah, Schumer's strategy, just wait. And then monstrous James Carville. By the way, New York Times asked James Carville to say this. That was a fucking choice. Just yesterday. James Carville. The best things Democrats can do in this moment, roll over and play dead and let Trump hang himself on his own, whatever. Hakeem Jeffries, testily. What leverage do we have? Democrats furious not at the fascism, but at their constituents for fighting fascism, literally. First, any so-called opposition party that is unable or unwilling to communicate coherently and unflinchingly about a party of Nazi rapists and pedophiles should disband immediately. All right. Their entire existence, the Democratic Party leadership, has led up to this moment. When there's a Doge Nazi blocking the door as teenagers illegally sabotage and ransack the government, you don't just pose for the cameras. You remove the Doge Nazi by any means necessary. And you go to jail if that's what it takes to stop this and or to galvanize the population to rise against oligarchs and Nazis. Republicans are openly calling for our enslavement or death. There is no point to pressure them. Hakeem Jeffries is like, why don't they protest Republicans? Within the system, the only point of pressure is on Democrats. And if they're not going to put their lives and livelihoods on the line at this last gasp, they need to resign. And we need to make them resign and replace them with people who won't partner with fascists. All right. I'm going to end on a good note, positive note, happy note. We're all going to be happy here. All right. Yeah. All right. This will be quick. The Musks, the Netanyahus, the Trumps are in the direct tradition of formaldehyde heads and or skeletons, deranged phrenologists. I know I should have done it separately, but who cares? It was like 2 hours ago. I couldn't think of something happy to end it on, so this is kind of trying to be happier. And people whose names we say should be erased. They are not echoes, they are not shimmers. They are walking directly in the same footsteps. History already spat this shit out, and it's going to spit these tyrants out as well. We are going to destroy them because we have no other choice.